New data from November 2025 reveals a terrifying reality. While the national economy slows to a crawl, 10 specific states are already teetering on the edge of financial ruin. We're talking about pension funds running dry, insurance markets collapsing, and unemployment spikes that are double the national average. If you live in one of these red zone states, your financial future could be wiped out in the next 12 months. To understand why these specific states are in the crosshairs, we have to look at the perfect storm hitting the US economy right now, in late November 2025. This isn't just about inflation anymore. We are seeing a structural breakdown in 3 key areas that is punishing some regions while leaving others untouched. First, the commercial real estate crash is finally detonating. Office values in cities like Chicago and San Francisco are projected to plunge by up to 40% by the end of this year. This is incinerating the tax bases of major cities, forcing state governments to either slash services or hike taxes to cover the gap. Second, the tech correction of 2025 has been brutal. We've seen over 158,000 job losses in California alone this year. High-earning taxpayers are vanishing from the tax rolls, leaving massive budget deficits in their wake. And third, the insurance crisis. In states like Florida, premiums have tripled, making home ownership mathematically impossible for the middle class. When you combine these factors with the Federal Reserve's tighter policies, you get a map of America that looks like a fractured glass. Some pieces are holding together, but the ones we're about to discuss are shattering. JP Morgan's chief economist recently warned of a material risk of recession. Moody's Analytics has already flagged 21 states as being at high risk or already in a downturn. But among them, 9 stand out as the absolute most vulnerable. These are the states with no safety net, massive debts, and economic engines that have completely stalled. Let's start with the state that consistently ranks as the #1 most vulnerable economy in America, Louisiana. If a recession hits in late 2025, Louisiana is effectively walking into a hurricane without a roof. The data is damning. As of late 2025, Louisiana has one of the lowest credit scores in the nation, and a government reserve balance that is terrifyingly low, ranking 50th in some fiscal health reports. This means the state has almost zero savings to weather a storm. Unemployment here is already hovering around 4.4%, higher than the national average, and the poverty rate remains stubbornly high. The state's economy is heavily reliant on the energy sector and federal aid, both of which are volatile. In a recession, federal purse strings tighten, and energy demand often drops. For residents, this translates to immediate cuts in public services. We're talking about a state where the safety net is already shredded. Unemployment insurance covers a tiny fraction of those out of work. If you lose your job in Louisiana during the next downturn, you are largely on your own. It is the textbook definition of ill-prepared. Next, we move to the ticking time bomb of the Midwest, Illinois. While Louisiana suffers from poverty, Illinois suffers from mismanagement on a colossal scale. The headline here is pension debts. As of late 2025, Illinois has the worst pension crisis in the nation, with unfunded liabilities estimated between $145 billion and $201 billion, depending on who you ask. That's roughly 19% of the state's entire GDP just in debt. Chicago is in the eye of this storm. The city's budget for 2025 shows pension costs devouring funds that should go to police, fire, and schools. To make matters worse, commercial real estate in Chicago is crashing, with values expected to drop significantly. This erodes the property tax base the city depends on. For the average resident, this means one thing: taxes are going up and property values are stagnant. You are paying more to live in a state that is technically insolvent. If a recession hits, Illinois has no lever to pull other than raising taxes even higher, which will only accelerate the exodus of residents and businesses. California was once the engine of the American economy, but in 2025, that engine is sputtering. The Golden State is facing a recession, a downturn hitting its wealthiest earners first. Tech layoffs have been relentless. Visual Capitalist reports that California accounts for 14% of all US layoffs this year, with over 158,000 jobs lost so far. Even giants like Amazon are cutting engineering roles, which were once thought to be safe. This matters because California's tax revenue is dangerously dependent on capital gains from these high earners. When tech stocks stumble and IPOs dry up, the state budget collapses. We're looking at a massive budget deficit that forces difficult cuts. Add to this the unemployment rate, which has spiked to around 5.4 to 5.5%, one of the highest in the nation. The cost of living remains astronomical, meaning that when people lose their $150,000 tech jobs, they don't just downgrade, they leave. This outmigration creates a doom loop. Fewer taxpayers, less revenue, worse services, more people leaving. California is too big to fail, but it is certainly not too big to suffer. Crossing the country to New York, we see a different kind of crisis. New York is being hammered by the slow-motion collapse of the commercial real estate market. Post-pandemic work habits have solidified, and office vacancies in New York City remain stubbornly high. Valuations for these skyscrapers are predicted to drop by roughly 30% by the end of 2025. Why does this matter to you? Because commercial property taxes fund the subway, the police, and the sanitation departments. When that revenue evaporates, the burden shifts to homeowners and renters. New York is already treading water, according to Moody's Analytics, with an economy that is barely growing. Combined with a high debt load, New York has over $233 billion in state debt. The state has very little room to maneuver. If a recession hits Wall Street, which contributes a massive chunk of state revenue, New York faces a fiscal double whammy that could lead to a 1970s-style fiscal crisis. The safety net here is expensive, and without tax revenue from high finance and commercial real estate, the math simply doesn't work. Nevada is the canary in the coal mine for consumer spending. The state currently has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country, sitting at roughly 5.3%. This is a state that lives and dies by tourism and hospitality. In a recession, the first thing American families cut from their budget is the trip to Vegas. But it's not just the casinos. Nevada's housing market is showing cracks. During the pandemic boom, prices skyrocketed, but now, with interest rates staying elevated, affordability has collapsed. The state has a high debt-to-income ratio among its residents, meaning people are leveraged to the hilt. If the national economy contracts by even 1%, Nevada's unemployment rate could easily leap to 8% or 10% overnight. We saw this in 2008 and 2020. Nevada crashes harder and faster than almost anywhere else because its economy is built on discretionary spending. If you live here, you are riding a volatile roller coaster that is about to hit a steep drop. Florida is facing an existential crisis that has nothing to do with a traditional recession, but will be exacerbated by one. The insurance market here is broken. As of November 2025, the average homeowner is paying nearly $6,000 a year for insurance, triple the national average. In some coastal areas, it's far worse. This hidden tax is crushing the housing market. Inventory is piling up in places like Cape Coral and Tampa, where prices have already started to drop. People want to sell, but buyers are terrified of the insurance premiums. If a recession hits and incomes drop, widespread mortgage defaults are inevitable. You cannot pay a mortgage and an $800 monthly insurance premium on a reduced income. Florida's economy is heavily tied to real estate and construction. If the housing market freezes because of insurance costs, the entire state economy grinds to a halt. It's a bubble that isn't popping because of prices, but because of the cost to simply hold on to the property. New Jersey is often overshadowed by its neighbor, New York, but its fiscal situation is arguably worse. The state carries a staggering debt load, over $213 billion. It has consistently ranked near the bottom for fiscal health for decades, but 2025 brings new challenges. New Jersey has one of the highest foreclosure rates in the nation. The cost of living is suffocating, and like Illinois, it suffers from massive unfunded pension liabilities. The state has been playing a shell game with its budget for years, but a recession exposes all the cracks. With high property taxes that are already driving residents away, New Jersey has no ability to raise revenue without causing a mass exodus. If the economy turns, New Jersey is likely to face a credit downgrade, making it harder to borrow money to keep the lights on. For residents, this means the risk of aggressive tax hikes or drastic cuts to schools and infrastructure is higher here than almost anywhere else. Arizona was the poster child for the pandemic housing boom. Prices in Phoenix and Tucson went vertical, but what goes up must come down. We are seeing significant cooling in these markets as we close out 2025. The real danger for Arizona lies in its debt-to-income ratio. It has one of the highest ratios in the country at 1.84. This means for every dollar of income, the average household owes nearly $2 in debt. This is sustainable when home prices are rising and jobs are plentiful. It is catastrophic when they are not. With the tech sector slowing down, Arizona has a growing Silicon Desert presence that is vulnerable to the same layoffs as California. Income instability is rising. If home values dip below what people owe, we could see a wave of strategic defaults similar to 2008. Arizona is highly sensitive to interest rates, and with rates staying higher for longer through 2025, the pressure on this debt-laden state is reaching a breaking point. Finally, we have a surprise entry. Colorado. You might think of Colorado as booming, but beneath the surface, there is a debt crisis brewing. Like Arizona, Colorado has an alarmingly high household debt-to-income ratio of 1.84. The cost of living in Denver and Boulder has exploded, outpacing wages for years. Residents have bridged the gap with credit. Now, with inflation still eating away at paychecks and interest rates making that debt expensive, the average Colorado family is financially fragile. Furthermore, Colorado is seeing a rapid increase in unemployment, which has crept up to around 4.7%. The state is vulnerable because it feels wealthy, but that wealth is built on leverage. A recession that cuts incomes even slightly could cause a cascade of defaults on auto loans, credit cards, and mortgages here. It is the silent crisis because on paper, the state looks okay, but the balance sheets of its residents are deep in the red. So, what does this mean if you live in one of these 10 states? It means you need to be on high alert. We are seeing a bifurcation of the American economy. States with low debt, diverse economies, and affordable housing, places like the Dakotas or parts of the Midwest, might weather this recession with just a few bruises. But the states we've listed are facing structural failure. If you are in a red zone state, expect 3 things in 2026. First, aggressive tax hikes. Whether it's property tax in Illinois or toll roads in New Jersey, the government will come for your wallet to fill their budget holes. Second, a decline in services. Expect longer wait times at the DMV, fewer police on the streets, and crumbling infrastructure as maintenance is deferred. And third, a potential drop in your home's value. In states like Florida and Arizona, the market is correcting. If you plan to sell, the window of opportunity is closing fast. This isn't fear-mongering, it's financial preparation. The smartest move right now is to pay down high-interest debt and build an emergency fund that can last 6 months. Because relying on the state safety net in these regions is a gamble you don't want to take. The economy is shifting beneath our feet. These 10 states are the fault lines, and they will crack first. If you're in one of them, prepare now. Watch this video next to see exactly how the housing market crash is spreading to your city.